Beautiful. Before I have Sean go, just wanted to remind the community I sent out an email and I also put this in the PyHC general Slack. But the spring 25 meeting, instead of being hybrid, we're just going to make it all virtual this year. Given all the travel difficulties that everyone's having right now, I'm sure you can imagine. It just didn't make sense. So hopefully we can try for that again at the next spring meeting to do a hybrid component. But like I said in the email, in the meantime, there's a lot of other meetings that are upcoming that hopefully, by that point things will have stabilized a bit. So if you can make it to those, you definitely should consider it. And the other update I have is that after a long wait, FEP 4, I updated it based on the last biannual meeting we had. So that information is there if you want to take a look.
When did the VEP4 update happen? I didn't know about that.
I did it Friday.
Oh, okay. That
Yep.
would explain
Very
why.
recent.
Very recent. Awesome. I'm just curious, did much change from the feedback?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is just pulling a lot of the language out of FEP 4 for specific things changing to saying it will apply to just all applicable standards track FEPs. Um, so that's the one thing that was really different since the fall meeting. And I know John Niehoff is kind of doing his best to get all those other FEPs put together.
Mhm. Nice. Well,
Um,
that's good timing because the repo template thing that I'm going to be showing off I sort of had FEP4 in mind when I was making it because there can be different flavors of repo templates that meet various requirements that are outlined inside that thing, and it could potentially make it easier to tell the difference between the different levels if, that's helpful. So anyway, cool. Good timing.
that's all I had though. So if you wanted to go ahead and take it away.
By all means, then. Yep. Yeah, so this telecon, we wanted to use time just for me to show off a couple things that I have been building for the community, and they're things that I could use a little bit of feedback too. So if people get opinions or feelings about what I demonstrate, I would like to hear them. I'm not sure that I have enough material to fill an entire hour, but I don't know if that will really offend anybody. So let's see here. I can go ahead and start sharing a screen here, and hopefully we are looking at GitHub. Yeah,
Yep.
cool. So I wanted to show off today just a welcome page that I made for the PyHC environment, and then a repo template that I made for like new PyHC projects in general. And I think this little welcome page is going to be a lot easier to show off and a lot quicker, so I think I'll get it out of the way first. And this is for just if in case anyone hasn't seen this yet, this is the GitHub repo that contains the pipeline that automatically updates our little binder deployed environment with all the PyHC packages installed. There's this cool launch binder button. But I recently learned that there's a feature where you can tack on to the end of that binder URL, basically question mark URL path equals lab tree slash, and then the name of any notebook you want. And when you click the launch binder button, it opens a particular notebook and not just the Jupyter Lab experience that you're used to seeing. So I'm able to leverage that to hopefully this launches in like, sub 30 seconds. Usually it's pretty quickly if someone's used it before. And I think I've used this version since it got updated. Ooh. Aw. It looks like even though wow, I just ran this like 35 minutes ago and it launched immediately, but it is not going to do that right away. So I'm going to pivot, I think, and come back to that once that's open. I got a chat here. Yep. So, yeah, the one unfortunate thing about this binder image with all the PyHC packages installed is that it is a large image. I think it's something on the order of like 11 to 14 gigabytes when it's uncompressed. So even though there's actually zero environment building when we're launching Binder, the thing has to pull, that many gigabytes of data over a pretty slow network. So I'm going to switch gears and just talk about the PyHC repo template, and we'll come back because that could take like 5 to 10 minutes for Binder to launch. Whoops. So anyway, I guess get excited to see that welcome page afterwards. Switching gears. So, first of all, I don't know if anyone even knew that GitHub actually does officially support templates. If you want to make a repo template for people to be reused, it doesn't just have to be a repo that people will now go, clone and copy and stuff like that. There is actually a use template button up here in the top right corner, which is lovely. So this resource that I've created here, this PyHC repo template, is meant to be a template that if you just are, new to Python or you're starting a new project and you want a good starting point, especially one that meets most of PyHC's standards just out of the box, you could start here. You could go to this website, you could click use this template, create a new repository, and then in just a couple steps, you give it and it's just like starting up a new GitHub repo. But when you hit create repository, it's going to have all these goodies that are baked into it. So how about I just give us a quick little guided tour of what is in here. And I think I'll do that by starting off just with the README, which is what I'm expecting people to look at when they first get here. So I spent a good amount of time, putting good information into this. So we got a quick overview telling you that this is created by us, and it's got a link to our website. How to use this template just walks you through what I just showed you there, that there is actually a use this template button. We're recommending that people make them public repos, and then all you have to do is just update pyproject.toml and then rename my PyHC package in this source directory to whatever you want, and then you're off to the races. PyHC's standards do have people follow PEP 8 style recommendations. So we mentioned that up front, give a link to what that is, give you a couple linter recommendations, and this was linted itself with Flake 8. So this has been a big exercise of just eating our own dog food and making sure that we actually can make a very simple Hello World PyHC repo that does follow all of our standards. And luckily, I didn't find the process too onerous, so hopefully other people doing this would not either. And this would be just even one less step that they have to do. Um, you need tests if you're going to be a PyHC package. So this comes out of the box with a few. And we mentioned PyTest, although you can certainly use your own if you want, if you have a different testing standard that you like better. And then immediately I'm in here talking about publishing to PyPI and Conda because we want to recommend that both people do that. But one neat thing that I've done with this already, and I guess this is where I'll start diving into it a little bit, is I've already set this up with a GitHub Actions workflow that publishes automatically to PyPI every time you make a release. So just in GitHub workflows, publish to PyPI. This is a very minimal example. Again, maybe this is complete review for everyone. Maybe you're already doing this on GitHub. Maybe you've never seen this for the first time. But with just that amount of code, anytime you go over here into releases and make a new release, you get something stuck on PyPI. And in fact, because I made a version 0 release, there is a package called my PyHC package on PyPI right now that points to this repo. Um, I'll probably release version 001 once we've gotten like, a bit of community feedback on this, and I feel like nothing is going to change because If you want to make even one change, you have to bump the version number in PyPI, and I think it'd be silly for a repo template to have a version of anything other than 0001. So I'm trying to avoid that. Anyway, so you got some good information and a head start on publishing your package. Then getting a DOI. I don't know if anybody noticed that there's already a DOI slapped onto this thing, but this just simple little 5-step plan shows you how to log into Zenodo and to have it start linking to your GitHub account, which will automatically mint a DOI for your package every time you make a release. So trying to automate a lot of this stuff. And I know for a fact a lot of PyHC packages go really deep with Zenodo integration. And I know not everyone uses this function, so maybe I'd be curious if people are doing this the other way, like the GitHub centric way to get a DOI rather than the Zenodo one, maybe why this one doesn't work. But I do link out to this little guide here where I got the steps, and it in a very detailed way walks you through like exactly what you're supposed to click on the Zenodo website, and you can see what you have to toggle on to get the syncing to start happening. And then we talk about citation files right away because that's been a new initiative here in PyHC. That's not actually a part of the PyHC standards. So this is the first thing, well, maybe not the first thing, but this is one of the first things I've added that's not, it's kind of extra credit, not necessarily acquired, but these things are awesome, especially if you have a DOI because it gives you a place to put citation information. And now GitHub totally scrapes that and will stick it off in this little sidebar about every website that has a citation.cff file. So you can click this and get citations for it in a couple different versions, encouraging people to do that. Documentation, just mentioned that we've got a docs directory in here and recommending read the docs because if you do, you get to join the PyHC documentation hub. We give alternatives because you're not forced to use read the docs here at PyHC, but if you do, you automatically get in here where you can be a part of an awesome search across documents, and no one uses the word awesome in their documentation. Maybe we should talk about marketing. Um, I don't need to really spend much time on the rest of this, just code of conduct, license, a note on PyHC environment compatibility, and I kind of mention a couple notes about that, trying to limit dependency conflicts and all of that stuff, link to standards, link to package submission instructions in case you made an awesome heliophysics package with this template. Now, pause for a brief second so we're not drinking from a fire hose here, but I've tried to keep this minimal. Basically, this is just a wrapper around a Python hello world. So if you actually look into the source code of the repo, there's just one main.py, just hello world, but it does have docstring in the recommended format that we do docstrings in, and this does perfectly lint with 0 errors. And then over here in tests, we have a comprehensive test suite with fantastic code coverage. This you can run and it will test the hello world over here. And if you run it with PyTest and code coverage flags enabled, you get 100% code coverage, which is exactly where you want to start. And we're recommending people keep that up when they build off of this. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward, just docs that just has a text file in here as a placeholder for documentation. Also has an example of what a PyHC self-evaluation looks like because why not? Had to stick some kind of text in here. And a git ignore that's pre-populated with GitHub's Python example of a git ignore. I don't know if people have seen that before either, but when you're starting a new repo, they give you an option based on what language you're using. And in Python, they recommend ignoring all of these things. So boom, there you have it. Code of conduct is just the contributor covenant code of conduct, which per PyHC standards, you have to be at least compatible with this one. So that's where we're starting off. Contribution guideline, a license that can be, obviously any open source kind of license. I went with BSD 3. If anyone thinks that's a controversial opinion, I'd be interested to know if there is a better default recommendation, like maybe MIT or something. But I think I did a lot of scraping through PyHC repos, and this was a popular one. And then pyproject.toml instead of the old setup.py and setup.config because the world has moved on to pyproject.toml. And at that point, there's not really much else to show off. This is just a repo template. Comes complete with a PyHC badge and a DOI, like I said. And maybe before I open it up for discussion, I'll just mention kind of what I said at the very top when Julie was mentioning FEP4 was I'm planning on this being the start of potentially many flavors of this. So this was what I saw as like the most generic PyHC repo template that I could make, but I can imagine going and looking at the requirements for the gold, silver, and bronze levels in FEP4 and potentially making, gold, silver, and bronze versions of this repo template in case you wanted to easily show what the differences are between the levels, or if you knew you didn't want to shoot for gold, for example, you could start with a repo template that was one step lower, although that kind of idea could work. And I can also imagine other like common use cases that are sticking points for people making Python packages, like wrapping other languages. So I kind of want like a C flavored repo template and a Fortran flavored template where maybe just the hello world here is written in a different language like C or Fortran, and then maybe the template could go ahead and do everything required to wrap that and package it up nicely, and even have a GitHub Actions workflow that still publishes to PyPI, even though you have those weird problems in there. And I know there's been lots of people, even with current PyHC packages, that have problems getting that done. So maybe having a repo template that solves those problems for you out of the box could be helpful. Anyway, that's where my head was at. That's been a presentation of what exists here so far, and I'm curious to know if anyone thinks I've done a good job or a bad job. So I'll open it up for a minute here.
I don't think you've ever done a bad job.
Thank you kindly.
Maybe if people's thoughts are still percolating. I do see there's a question from Matt Young in the chat.
Well, thank you. I did not look at the chat while I was going through here.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Does most of this translate to GitLab repos, modulo clearly GitHub specific elements? I'm not sure actually what would happen. Um, I mean, clearly you can't use the use this template button for a GitLab repository over here, but um, I don't know, maybe does anyone else who actually uses GitLab have any thought on that? Because I don't see anything here that would be offending, but yeah.
I think the probably the GitHub workflows is the only thing, and maybe the Zenodo integration. Um, One strategy which may work well would be to decouple GitHub workflows from like the actual running of tests. And one way to do that is with either Tox or Nox, because you can like set up the environments there. I strongly recommend Nox because the config files are in Python.
Hmm.
Um,
Ooh, and that,
so
yeah.
and kind of along those lines, I was wondering about maybe making some opinionated choices, like if this is for someone who is just starting, having to choose between PyTest or unit test or whatever, um, that can be kind of like hard to know. And then like also with linters, the community seems to be settling on rough for the broader scientific or for the broader Python community. So I think like making choices for people, and then the people who um, have opinions probably know how to switch to them fairly straightforwardly. So
Yeah. And you reminded me, I don't, maybe we don't need like 800 different versions of this thing, but I was also considering a version that used maybe more modern tooling like PlasmaPi does, like Knox and UV even. So I think we might be learning a little bit about UV from you, Nick, in the not too distant future. And if something like that sparks curiosity in me, I might want to make a new version of this that uses those kinds of things because even I don't really understand them too well. Even just making a repo template that used them would be a good exercise for me to go through.
yeah, I think it's worth checking out the PyOpenSci package template, especially since we may like partner with them, or some projects might in the future. Um, and then there's one called the Hypermodern Python template, which is from a few years ago at this point, but I'll put a link to that in chat if I can find it.
Oh, please do. Yeah. If I can draw from any other examples, I'd be happy to look at what other people are doing out here. I've seen this copier thing before, so that's interesting that PyOpenSci immediately went with it. Yeah, I'll check this out later and see if there's anything to rope in. And hyper modern Python. Booyah. Thanks, Nick. And now that I'm going back through the chat here, I'm seeing at least one vote or at least a couple votes in support of BSD3. So, woohoo, maybe I didn't make the worst license choice for this thing either. Curious. What did they go with? Haha. Now I feel like I win. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's not too intense of an idea here. Hopefully just and giving people a starting point for PyHC. And of course, I'm far from the first person to even create a new Python repo template. So I almost wondered if it was even worth the exercise because there's so many out there. But I figured with our standards, we do have a unique set of requirements. So I figured this was an opportunity to just show off what ours looks like. So there you have it. Mm.
Yeah, that's a fantastic. Yeah, it's a fantastic project and gives a new user yeah ideas of what's required. I was one. Yeah, so you mentioned Fortran and C. So some packages like Komodo, we're struggling with how to automatically build like a shared library. So if you had a hello world in a piece of C or Fortran code, how it would connect to Python and be called and automatically compiled, that would be a useful template to have as well. So yeah.
Excellent. That's really all the push I needed to go ahead and say it's worth making because I was already like more than 90% leaning toward I should just go make that. So there you go. Consider that on my to-do list now.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. That's a great product.
Yep. And yeah, Julie, like I mentioned, I'll have to go back through and read through PEP 4 and see if there's like any super obvious differences that merit making different versions of repo templates to show them off. I'll admit to it's been long enough that I've forgotten all the complexities of that, but I'll get my head back into it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And maybe I'll give like one more slightly uncomfortably long pause in case anyone else has any thoughts, and then I might switch over to show off the welcome page for the environment for a second, and then I might come back to it even in case anyone gets any thoughts on this that come back up while I'm showing off the other thing. But yeah, anyone else got any thoughts?
Can you convert a project to this template if it exists already? That seems hard, so I expect not, but just asking.
Yep, doubt it. Um, unless you wanted to do weird things with code spaces, there's that's probably not a supported um thing.
Yeah, because what would you do where there were differences? And yeah, it seems like that would be a weird repository diff resolving algorithm would surely be messy.
Yep, right. Although maybe it's interesting to point out that they do have that over here. So if no one's ever actually used code spaces before, you can fire up a repo template over here and check things out, which is kind of fun. I'm actually curious to see if they have the tooling in place where this will work. Um, boom. Oops. Oh, you can't do copy paste. So what is the, oh, PyTest cov equals source test. Did I do that right? No. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, I think you have to install the uh, coverage.py and PyTest code. They're like extensions that I can't remember the names of.
I was just curious to see how far they had gone with that. Anyway, fun stuff. Okay, so this has been open. This tab has been Jupyter Lab, not Binder, for a little while. So I suspect if I click this, we're going to see Welcome Notebook in PyHC environment. Is that what happens? Yes, it is. Woohoo! So remembering at the beginning of this telecon, I had clicked this button, and then Binder took a long time to load. Um, just to show off that this thing is not an entire piece of junk. I want to show this working in like sub 30 seconds because this usually goes very quickly. You click the link and then boom, there it is. So that's what I meant to do earlier. And now I'll show off the second thing that I came here to do, which is this new welcome notebook in the PyHC environment, which is even more straightforward than the repo template. But I just think this is a cool thing that you're able to do in general. And I think this is surprisingly useful, even though it's a very simple concept. Because, before when you would launch this, you would just get a Jupyter Lab launcher. Maybe you would probably open up and just go, okay, maybe you'd see import test or unit test in the sidebar, but if you're a new user of this thing, you would just be sitting here, what the heck is going on? So now instead, you're greeted with a lovely welcome image that just says this is a cloud-based Jupyter Lab instance maintained by us, provides zero install access to all the published PyHC packages, and you can click that link to get to our projects page. So you can do everything right here in the browser and learn more at the GitHub repo. And right here, this just answers the immediate question that I think everyone's going to have when they open this environment, asking what's it for? And we're suggesting this is to try out PyHC packages without installing anything, to run code interactively in the browser using JupyterLab, to prototype and share heliophysics workflows, and to help test for compatibility across the ecosystem. And then we give this important note here just for people to know how it works, that the environment updates nightly with the latest versions of packages, and the Conda environment is fully writable, which I haven't advertised very well. So I don't even know if people here would know that you can pip install new packages or delete packages, customize the workspace infinitely to fit your needs. It's just temporary. So note that all your changes reset when the binder session ends. And then we give a link to PyHC Documentation Hub if you want to search through the documentation to use the packages that are installed here. We tell you just what these two notebooks are that are included, and they are links that work really nicely by just opening new tabs inside JupyterLab. So you can even see right here, these are the PyHC packages that are installed and all the PyHC imports work. And unit tests, which are just for the core packages right now, but I'm going to be updating that eventually, hopefully with like every single package's unit tests that offer tests. And one little command in case you wanted to see the contents of the entire environment. You don't have to know this command off the top of your head. We just give you a button to push. And it takes comically long because this is a comically huge Conda environment. Literal thousands of things, but there is everything. And if you want to contribute, we've got links to Telecon. We say, join us via Telecon's GitHub or our package submission process. And this goes to our contact page or our GitHub organization space or the instructions to submit a PyHC package, which every time you do that, the package gets roped right back into this environment and we're all one big happy family. So there you go. I have been up to those two things as the PyHC tech lead recently. And while people collect their amazement at that, I'm going to go back and read, I think, one message that I have in the chat over here. And it's a link to something called Cruft over here. I can check that out later. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, I don't know too much about it, but like seen a lot of SunPy, I think pull requests or whatever with it. So I think they've been finding it quite useful.
Fight back against the boilerplate monster. They seem like fun. Awesome. Um, yeah, any thoughts on this, or is this just like, okay, good job, pat on the back, move on? Cool.
From this, is there a way to like access a terminal?
Oh,
Is it
absolutely. Yep. Over here, terminal.
okay? The reason I'm asking is that I've been doing some tutorials this month for research software engineering and finding a place where you can do Git tutorials on like a website thing. Um, kind of hard to do. So
Right there, maybe I'll even add in one blurb about terminal access if I can find a logical way to squeeze that in there. But yep, all possible and all part of, how you can more or less infinitely customize this environment to do an online workflow if you really wanted to. But there you go. That's pretty much all I had to share on that. I think I'll just also mention that a few of us here are involved with something called the Science Platforms Coordination Working Group, where we are building online environments not just for PyHC, but for the field of heliophysics at large. And they may end up including tooling that goes beyond Python or from other different organizations. And we're now going to have lovely little welcome notebooks that explain the different flavors of environments that we make for that too. So this just opened one nice little window of possibility for explaining our online tooling to folks. And with that, I think I'll close out a couple of these tabs. Showed off the repo template, showed off that. Any other thoughts from people?
There's a session at the CDAR meeting this year, their usual snakes on a plane session about Python stuff. This would be, I think, useful there if you consider presenting it, or if anyone else from PyHC is going to that meeting, having them present it.
Oh, thank you. I do think I saw a call for the new snakes
Yeah.
come through my inbox pretty recently. I think I saw that it was being combined with a different session, but that's all good.
It's not being combined. We're just coordinating with one of the GEM focus groups.
Oh, awesome.
Oh yeah, Angela, I didn't see you on here. So yeah.
No, I joined late. Just in time, which I'm very happy about. Um,
Yeah,
one
does
thing
this
we're
fit
also,
your session?
yeah, this is my session.
Does this thing fit kind of what you're, I mean, the people that are there might benefit from this. I don't know if it's exactly in the theme of your session, but
It's not exactly in the theme. But one thing we are doing this year is if just accepting like one slide overviews of things. So, perhaps something like this, packages from people who won't be able to show up in person, something that you might not want to do a whole presentation about, but you want to bring to people's attention. And we're going to have that cycling throughout the 30 minutes of the discussion. So that's another way for people to participate that we haven't done in the past.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Yeah, I know, especially with this political climate, I know it's personally difficult for me to get travel funding for this kind of stuff right now. So that's a good addition. Practical for the time.
Yeah, no, I probably won't be able to go myself. So I'm trying to do as much upfront organizing for the poor folks who will be there in person as possible.
Gotcha. Well, great. Appreciate everyone coming on and listening to my spiel about this template and the welcome page and giving the thoughts you had. If anyone has anything else to discuss on this, or if you want to shoot me a message about it offline, if something pops up to you, I'd appreciate that. I build these things for the community, and I always like to have community input. But otherwise, I don't really have anything else to fill time with, so we might be closing down the telecon before the top of the hour.
All right. Fine by me. Hearing no other words, yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap. Pretty sure same time, same place in 2 weeks. Topics TBD as usual. And we'll all chat soon.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
See you.
you.
Bye, y'all.
Yep, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.